I'm Elizabeth, and this video is about how to feed your sourdough starter. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Some people keep it in the refrigerator, some people keep it on the counter, some people feed it twice a day, once a day. It just depends on what you want to do with it and where you are in the process. You have to feed it more often when you're early on in the process, usually twice a day. The ratio that I do is a 1-1-1 ratio. It means I have the same amount weight-wise of the starter, the flour, and the water. I use 150 grams. I often double that though and have 2 containers going. We are a family of 11. We're an American military family, and we're stationed in kind of where we live is a rural area, and so it's a pain in the neck to get to the store to make bread or to buy bread, so I make the bread instead. So I'm going to show you what I have. This is my starter. And I started this with rye flour, with fresh ground rye flour, and I keep it going with a mixture of 1/3 rye and 2/3 all-purpose. You can use just all-purpose flour. That's just fine. I'm going to show you what that starter looks like. It's bubbly and active, and when I stir it, it's going to lose a huge amount of volume. It'll lose about half of its volume when it's stirred. But again, we're doing everything by weight. We're not measuring by volume. In addition to that, I have a new container that I'm going to keep the starter going in. I have my rye flour, and that is a whole grain flour. Then I have just regular white all-purpose flour. Some recipes specifically tell you not to use bleached flour because the bleach can kill off your yeast. And I tend to agree with that. I was using bleached flour for a while and I didn't realize it. My starter wasn't going. And once I switched to unbleached flour, it worked a lot better. I also have a scale that weighs in grams, and that's very important. We're going to turn it on, put the container on, and let it zero out. So you can add things in any order. I like to add the water first because I find that when I stir it up, it works a lot better. So we're going to add 150 grams of water. And if you're off by a couple of grams, it's just fine. It's not going to be a problem. Now we're going to add 150, zero it back out, we add 150 grams of the starter. That's 80. So we want another scoop. It's 144. 164. We're going to take a bit out. 152. That's just fine. Tap this off. There can be a bit left on there. It's not a big deal. I'm going to put that in there, and I forgot to bring another spoon for this, so we'll just do this. And I'm doing 50, this isn't the rye, this is the white flour. So I'm doing 100 grams of the white flour. Almost there, okay. And then we are going to zero that back out and do 50 grams of the rye flour. We're at 32, 38, 44, and 50. And all it's left to do is to stir this up. You want to make sure you get any bits of flour that are down at the bottom of your container. It's going to be kind of hard to stir, even at this ratio, which has a lot of water in it and a lot of the starter. And I like to use a clear or semi-transparent container so I can make sure that I have every last bit of flour stirred into it. Tap the spoon off. So you might be thinking, well, what about the rest of that starter? And this is either the waste or this is what you're going to use to bake with. You need some of your starter to keep the starter going, and then the rest of it you bake with. When I'm baking, I use about 200 grams of the starter to make a very large loaf of sourdough. And then the rest of my starter is used to just keep it going. You do want to put a lid on it. You don't want the lid to be super tight fitting, like you don't want to use a mason jar and cinch the lid down, because the lid will end up popping off or the jar will crack. So we are going to put the lid on. So it's almost all the way sealed, but you have just a little bit here so that some of the gas can escape. That's all there is to feeding your sourdough starter. This is something that you need to do about twice a day early on, or once a day later on, and then way later on, once you really have this going and it's working great, it's giving you good loaves of bread with lots of loft and lots of bubbles in it. You're happy with the crumb of your bread, the texture of it, and you're going to leave it in the refrigerator and take it out about 12 hours before you start baking and feed it. And then once you're baking 12 hours later, it's already eaten up a bunch of the flour your yeast has, and so your yeast is hungry and it's going to be ready to go with the flour that's in your bread. It's all you need to do, and I'd like to thank you for watching.